Hi, hello, and welcome to FFPC Insider Access for July 16th, 2026. My name is Eric Balkman. Connect with me on the X at Eric Balkman. You may know me from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, HSFF Hour, Extra Reps, the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown, and of course the FFPC, the Fantasy Football Players Championship. Once again, I want to remind everybody, if you are looking to put some of this actionable advice that you'll get tonight to good use, check out the Fantasy Football Players Championship. Baby Gorilla, $350 to enter, $1 million grand prize. The 7 Bananas promo is going live right now. Every time you get that 7th pick in consecutive drafts, we're going to keep giving you free teams, starting with best ball tournament entries, going all the way up to a free jungle safari for 4 if you prefer that, or $50,000. It's your choice. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. MyFFPC.com. Drafts are filling live and slow right now, as well as a sit and goes. You can register now. MyFFPC.com. I want to welcome in my guest host for tonight. Welcome back onto the show, actually. A guy who has hosted this show with me before. A gentleman that you know from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. You know him from Fantasy Points as well. An FSGA Radio Show of the Year host. Please welcome in at FG_Dolan on X, Joe Dolan. Joe, good evening, sir.
I'm having a great evening. I hope you're doing well, Eric. Thank you for having me on the program. It is the time of year when all of a sudden remember that I exist, and I'm not talking about just you, but like the people who were part of my life at one point start to wonder if Dolan is living and breathing, and it's just kind of weird how that always happens. People want my time this time of year, so I lie dormant like a bear for 6 months, and then everybody wants a piece. So it's good to be back here on the program. Obviously, we're back in full swing on SiriusXM, and obviously what we're doing at Fantasy Points. So obviously loving it right now that things are just starting to heat up.
What is your schedule? So we were talking about this before we went on. You are going to be on SiriusXM weekday mornings with Paul Kelly every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then what are you doing once the season starts?
Yeah, so I'm live with Paul Kelly every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. I am not a morning person. I have never been a morning person. I never will be a morning person. I think that's pretty evident right now, but they get me up early anyway, nonetheless. And then Tom Brawley hosts with Paul every Tuesday and Thursday. And that's going to continue throughout the 2026 NFL season, every Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. And then from everything that I understand, I am still a part of the game day program on SiriusXM, which will be 1 to 6 every Sunday during the NFL season, where Paul and I go through all the fantasy football leaders and all the fantasy football action live with you. And then Brian Drake and Drew Davenport have a new Fantasy Points radio show on SiriusXM as well. They're on Sunday afternoons now from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. So we're kind of taking over the airwaves at Fantasy Points. But for now, I have off on Saturday and Sunday, and that is until, of course, week number 1 rolls around.
So then the other thing I have to ask is that we know how you are slammed in the drafting season and in the during the NFL season, but when you are sort of like down, when everybody's talking fantasy baseball, fantasy basketball, what have you, where football is not prevalent in everybody's mind, how is Joe Dolan recharging those batteries?
I don't, especially this year. This year I moved from South Carolina to Pennsylvania, and now I'm pretty sure I just got lung cancer by walking outside. I'm in central Pennsylvania right now, and our air quality is the worst in the entire state of Pennsylvania. So I'm looking out at I can sort of see the sun through the cracks in my blinds here, and it is red. It is blood red, and that is very ominous. That's like, I don't know what that means for fantasy football, but I'm sure it's something. But nonetheless, I hope everybody's staying safe and staying inside if you're in the Midwest or the Northeast right now. But no, this year, recharging the batteries just didn't happen because we've been focused on buying a house, doing all that stuff. So it's just going to have to wait until after the season, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I would say, too, like, I mean, you guys are absolutely crushing it at Fantasy Points right now with everything going on with John and Graham. And, I mean, everybody there is doing such an excellent job. Obviously, you as well. And I feel like, while the NFL season is basically 4 or 5 months, it's running the things that you guys do at Fantasy Points, including that data suite, that takes up a lot of time, and it's a year-round labor of love.
And I'm very lucky to be, I guess, a forward-facing member of Fantasy Points. It's something that I don't take for granted, but the number of people we have behind the scenes who are making that thing go, especially with Brett Whitefield's team with the data suite, it's a staggering number of people that people don't know about. And obviously you need a lot of people to do that. When we're talking about developers, we're talking about data charters, we're talking about people who are doing our projections behind the scenes, using that data in a really actionable way. So I'm lucky that I just get to come on here and be a bobblehead and spit out stats from the research that our wonderful team at Fantasy Points has done.
I think you're not giving yourself enough credit. You're going to be doing more than just spitting out. You will be spitting out stuff from the data suite, but you'll be talking about a lot more than that as we get into the show tonight. Joe and I are going to go around the NFL in the first segment. Second segment, we will have a fantasy price check on many significant difference makers at each position. And then in the final segment today, we will go inside the mind of Joe Dolan, where we have a quasi lightning round talking about over and underrated players, sleepers, rookies, busts, best fantasy offenses, and more. That is going to take us all the way up to 9 o'clock tonight. Tell you what's going on the rest of the week on the FFPC family of podcasts. But let's kick things off in Indianapolis, Joe. We have the report here that DeAndre Smith, who is the running backs coach for Indianapolis, said that they need to find ways to take the workload off of Jonathan Taylor. They do have Seth McGowan, who they drafted in the NFL NFL draft this year. They also have DJ Giddens headed into his sophomore campaign. I don't know if this changes the way you think about Jonathan Taylor as a first-round pick. I mean, even if they take some of the workload off of him, we know he's going to be among the top workhorses in the NFL. FFPC drafters, according to FantasyMojo.com, are drafting Jonathan Taylor on average over the last 5 days in the Big Gorilla as running back 4 at the 109. Do you glean anything from this comment from the running backs coach, or is this going to be business as usual? It's going to be JT as much as you can eat all the time.
Got to be completely honest with you. I do this for a living. It is my job to know these players. I am not sure I could have off the top of my head before last week told you who the top backup to Jonathan Taylor was. You've got
do we know now yet?
No, I don't
Joe?
think we do know. DJ Giddens, and then the fairy tale of Indianapolis, Seth McGowan behind over there. So this does nothing to me. Now, I think you can make an argument, a pretty easy argument that actually it's a very easy argument that Christian McCaffrey's ceiling is higher than that of Jonathan Taylor, and then I think FFPC drafters would agree with that. You said Jonathan Taylor's going off the board as the 4th running back. I would presume that means Christian McCaffrey is going off as the 3rd running back.
That is correct.
Behind Bijan and Gibbs. So FFPC drafters clearly agree with me there. But this is a nothing burger. Now, do I want to figure out which of these guys is going to be used more? Sure. But as you well know, the guy being the top handcuff doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to play more as the number 2 back. Is it possible that the Colts coaching staff views either DJ Giddens or Seth McGowan as somebody who can have a role independent of Jonathan Taylor, but they favor the other one as kind of like the replacement for Jonathan Taylor? Whatever the case, I doubt either of these guys are even getting much love in best ball drafts, even the deepest of best ball drafts. It's a camp battle to watch, but it doesn't change how I feel about Jonathan Taylor. I agree with FFPC drafters that Jonathan Taylor is the RB4. I like Jonathan Taylor quite a bit this year, but even if one of these guys blows up in camp, I don't think that's going to necessarily change my opinion of Jonathan Taylor, whereas I would knock him down to RB5 or RB6. I think he's pretty clearly locked into let's call him RB 3.5 right now. He's pretty clearly locked into that for me.
Yeah, and after Taylor, Jeanty is pretty quickly goes right after him, along with James Cook, and then we're into the second round after those guys. So as it stands right now, we have 6 first-round running backs in the FFPC Big Gorilla, and Taylor is in at number 4. Now, this guy is not in the first round, but he has been climbing a little bit. There was a report on ESPN recently, Joe, that an AFC executive says that Quinshon Judkins is going to have a big year this season. This is his second year in the NFL. He was an honorable mention in the report for Jeremy Fowler's list of top running backs headed into this season. And he is coming off that leg injury, ankle injury, whatever it was, foot injury that ended his campaign last year prematurely. 827 yards on the ground in 2025, 7 touchdowns, also had 26 catches for just under 200 yards as well, targeted on 23% of his targets, of his pass routes that he ran last year. Now, it all comes back to ADP. We look at Judkins and where he's going right now. Quinshon Judkins is right between Montgomery, Swift, and Henderson, which sounds like a law firm, at the running back 21 at the 501. So he's going at that 4-5 turn. Are you of the opinion to agree with this AFC executive that Judkins is going to have a big year in Cleveland?
I have a tough time with this. Number one, I think the Browns stink. Now, their offensive line was bad last year. They have no continuity on that offensive line, but they actually went out and made a bunch of moves where maybe midway through the season, heck, even maybe early on, those moves at the offensive line start to pay off. But on a bad football team with quarterback issues where he's coming off of this serious injury, I almost view him as like a lesser version of Cam Skattebo right now. And Skattebo, I think, is going ahead of him in these formats. And those names that you said around him, that you said, David Montgomery, DeAndre Swift, and TreVeyon Henderson. I very much like David Montgomery more than Quinshon Judkins this year. That's a pick that I would make over Quinshon Judkins. Like, if I had that choice 10 times, I'd probably make it like 8-2, something like that. DeAndre Swift and Quinshon Judkins, I think that's more of a 50-50, but I definitely prefer Quinshon Judkins to TreVeyon Henderson. Scares the bejesus out of me because I know what TreVeyon Henderson's upside theoretically looks like, but at the end of last season, when they're on the road to the Super Bowl, they decided that Ramondre Stevenson was going to be their bell cow. That could change this offseason, but I do have concerns about TreVeyon Henderson. Nonetheless, a Cleveland Browns running back that I have been drafting more at his cost than Quinshon Judkins at his cost has been Dylan Sampson. Now, Dylan Sampson was a complete freaking zero as a runner last year. Just 175 yards on 65 carries, 2.7 yards per rush. All right, the guy was terrible. But among running backs with 100 or more routes run, he was like a top 5 running back in yards per route run. This was a guy who was really good through the air. So that gives them an opportunity to have somebody who can play on third downs, on passing downs. This is, again, a team projected to be one of the worst in the NFL, so they're going to be playing from behind a ton. So I think Dylan Sampson, although I don't hate Quinshon Judkins by any means, I like what I saw out of Quinshon Judkins, I'm probably going to eschew having a lot invested in Quinshon Judkins until 2027. That's what I think. But Dylan Sampson, the concern I have for him in terms of playing a whole lot is the fact that he was terrible as a runner. The concern, the positive I have is I think he's going to be playing a lot in situations where running the ball isn't going to be prudent anyway, and he proved last year that he's a quality receiver.
It's interesting. Do you think that Sampson is the type of guy who, you could put on your roster and then put him in either as a flex or maybe like a top 25 running back on any given week because of those passing chops and the expected catches that he'll get this year?
Well, maybe. That remains to be seen. It also remains to be seen just how bad the Cleveland Browns are, right? Do they have a quarterback who can take advantage of any of this stuff? I think Shedeur Sanders was one of the highest check down rate quarterbacks in the entire NFL last year. I would think at some point, Shedeur Sanders, even if Deshaun Watson wins the job coming out of training camp, I would think at some point Shedeur Sanders is going to get starts this year. So it depends on the quarterback. It depends on just how bad Cleveland actually is. Do they get a new coach bump from Todd Monken, which I think is within the realm of possibility. But I would say Dylan Sampson, the hope is he becomes a flex-worthy kind of PPR running back. But those guys have been kind of drying up in recent years, we used to have the guys like the Theo Riddicks of the world. There's a throwback for you.
Yeah.
The Theo Riddicks of the world who would catch like 6 passes a week at the running back position. Those guys really don't exist anymore, at least independent of a role as a runner.
I think you're right about that, and there still are guys out there, but you got to squint a little bit to try to find them. I do want to go to YouTube right now. James Hicks, a good buddy here, wants to know about the Kamara news. They have restructured his contract. He took a pay cut, Joe, to stay in New Orleans this year. I'll ask you. I mean, we've been talking about this a lot on some of my other shows. Is Kamara a guy that is roster worthy for you this year in a 20-round, 12-team draft like the FFPC main event? And what does this do for Etienne for you, for how you feel about what this guy's going to do, knowing that Kamara is probably going to work himself in?
My first instinct was no. Alvin Kamara is not rosterable for me. But then I went and looked at our projections, which we tracked, and they were pretty damn accurate last year. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to sit here and pat myself on the back for this entire program, but we had really accurate projections. Chris Wecht, our projections guru, is phenomenal. We moved Alvin Kamara up to RB 46 in our projections. Now, you have to understand the difference between projections and rankings, right? The projections are just purely statistical projections. And it's possible for Alvin Kamara to maybe hit the numbers that we have outlined for him. 104 carries for 390 yards, 28 receptions for 187 yards. And he hits that exactly, and he's RB 46, and he has like basically 0 usable fantasy weeks. And that's what you want when you're ranking players, is you want usable fantasy weeks. But so I would say Alvin Kamara probably is going to be rosterable, and I would think he's going to be getting drafted before I'm comfortable drafting Alvin Kamara. But he is rosterable. Not on my teams, I don't think. But what it did do for Travis Etienne was, and by the way, I'm going to honor the guy's request and say his name the way he asked us to say it. I understand, when you're a kid and you're in big scary reporters are shoving microphones in your face and they call you Travis Etienne, you just smile and go, yeah. But Travis Etienne, what this did was this took him from a guy I was kind of fading, let's say a yellow card player, almost to a red card player, where I'm like, I really don't know what I want to do with him. We moved him down in our projections to RB 25. Now, I'm interested to see where he is getting drafted in the FFPC, because our projections just moved him behind Bashal Tutin and Ramondre Stevenson. And I would guess those are 2 players who are going pretty well past Travis Etienne in FFPC drafts, although obviously the high stakes community probably reacted a bit sensitively to the Alvin Kamara news.
So right now, and I'm looking at FFPC main event ADP for this, and you know what? I won't, because we have not had a live main event since this news came out. So I'll go back to Big Gorilla ADP, because we have had news on, we have had drafts go off since this Kamara report. Etienne is running back 17 at the 401 right now. He is right behind, essentially right behind Kyron Williams and Josh Jacobs, but he is still going ahead of Javonte Williams and Cam Skattebo. So that's where Etienne is going right now. I would imagine. And by the way, over the last 5 days in the Big Gorilla, he has fallen as late as the 408. So there is still a little bit, and he's gone as high as the 303. So you're talking about almost 2 full rounds of variance there.
So what you're talking about is people who think Alvin Kamara is completely cooked, and honestly, that's been my prevailing opinion this offseason. But I also understand the Saints. They got themselves out of salary cap hell. Doing right by a franchise icon who what did he say at the trade deadline last year, that if the Saints decided to trade him, he'd retire and start drinking pina coladas or something like that. Like, exactly. He has no interest in playing anywhere else. But maybe this is a suggestion that they think maybe he could still be effective in a limited role. And somebody who remains bullish on Travis Etienne would be somebody who thinks, you know what, this Saints offense, what we saw last year with Tyler Shuck and Kellen Moore, this is real. This is going to be an offense that's going to look better with the addition of Jordan Tyson, with the offensive line getting a year more experience, with Shuck having an offseason in the system. And then you put that in line with what they paid Travis Etienne on the open market, and you're like, this is a player they clearly believe in. But I'm just looking at our projections, and we, compared to where he is at, right, even in those big gorilla drafts, we have him completely buried. And that is not going to be a player I'm going to be drafting at cost. Full disclosure, I was drafting every Jaguar running back last year not named Travis Etienne, and we'll see how that worked out for me. Tank Bigsby ends up getting traded. Tootin doesn't do anything, but we actually have Etienne below Tootin, his former teammate, right now in our projections, and that's with us projecting a bigger role for Alvin Kamara, because it looked like Alvin Kamara signed a contract with real money. This is not, hey, Alvin, we'll give you a raise now, but we're going to cut you. That's not what this contract looks like.
The other thing, I'll just, to wrap this up with Kamara, if Etienne were if Etienne were to miss any time this year, Joe, and we needed to look at who the guy behind the guy would be in New Orleans, would Kamara be the type of guy that we could plunk in if Etienne was out that week, or do you see it as more of a committee with Miller and Neal? I actually think, believe it or not, that if Etienne were to miss like a week or two, I think they'd tell Alvin Kamara to take off the glasses, get in a phone booth, and put on the Superman cape for a week or two. I firmly believe they would do that, and I think the Saint fans would eat that up. Devin Neal, to me, Kendre Miller, rather. To me, he's like Marshawn Lloyd. I'm not sure he exists. He's like Marshawn Lloyd and Trey Benson. Does this guy actually, is he real? I'm not sure. The lady on the plane, you know what I'm talking about? The meme? That yes. MFer is not real. That's me with Kendre Miller right now. So I can't give you an opinion on guys that I've barely seen play football in Kendre Miller and Devin Neal. So I actually think in the event that Travis Etienne were to miss like a week or two, maybe not a serious injury, but a week or two, I actually do believe they put Alvin Kamara in the backfield as like, maybe not a bell cow, but as like the starter. Yeah, and that is useful, especially in FFPC main event where you can flex out to, you could start up to 4 running backs if you wanted with those dual flex spots. We'll keep the running back conversation going here, Joe, with Cam Skattebo. And this is another player and I said Judkins has been rising up a little bit. Skattebo was rising up significantly. John Harbaugh's new head coach called him a top-tier back, and he's planning on playing that way this year. Earlier this offseason, he was taking 11 on 11 reps. I don't know. I thought I read something or heard something that Skattebo was sneaking into reps. I don't know if the Giants wanted him to do it, but he was doing it anyway. He did a backflip at a celebrity softball game this year as well. And you think about his running style, and certainly that nasty injury that ended his season last year, I got to believe he's going to put himself in harm's way again. But with how good this guy is catching the ball, how good he is inside and outside the tackles, and quite frankly, if Malik Neighbors starts on PUP, or he is not capital letters Malik Neighbors at all this season, the Giants need some weapons, and he could be one of the significant ones for the Giants this year. I'll tell you right now, in the Big Gorilla over the last 5 days, you're looking at Cam Skattebo going off as running back 19 at the 404, right behind Etienne, right behind Javonte Williams, significantly ahead of that other glut, that Montgomery, Judkins, Swift, Henderson area. What do you make of Skattebo this season? The hype is rising, Joe. Are you buying into it?
I'm buying in would be strong, but I'm fine with him at ADP. This was somebody who was producing like an RB1 when in that very brief stretch before he broke his leg in Philadelphia. The thing about Skattebo is I just don't trust him to protect his body, and is that for our game, is that a good thing, at least in the short term? I've taken to calling him the lobster this offseason because he has a nervous system that functions as like a brain, but I don't think lobsters can feel pain or think, and I kind of view Cam Skattebo the same way. I know PETA will probably be yelling at me about that, but I think lobsters can sense that they should be in pain, but I don't know if they feel pain the way we think of pain, and I think Cam Skattebo is the exact same way. And lobsters don't have brains, in the way that we think of a brain. They just kind of are instinctive, and I think that's what Cam Skattebo is as well. But I'm more into Skattebo at his ADP than I am Judkins. I just thought I think his role is probably a little bit more complete. If you want to look on the downside, maybe you make an argument that the Giants could be just as bad as the Browns. I don't buy that. I actually think the Giants have some talent on their roster. Their defense has obviously great talent at the pass rusher position. And on offense, I think, I don't have a lot of faith, by the way, in Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator, but nonetheless, they do have Greg Roman on that offensive staff. And if for all of Greg Roman's faults, we do know that he can design a good run game, and I think Cam Skattebo will fit within that. There's also the downside of, you have two quality backs, guys who have played well in the NFL and have done way more in the NFL with their names in Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary than anybody behind Quinshon Judkins has done. And I know I just spent some time kind of halfway talking up Dylan Sampson, but Tyrone Tracy and Devin Singletary are objectively more accomplished NFL players. So these guys can probably come in and fill in for Skattebo a little more, but I just like Skattebo and his situation more, and I'm willing to buy him at ADP. I don't hate Judkins, but I like Skattebo more.
Skattebo is going a little bit higher in the FFPC Player 1 game, running back 18, still right around that 3-4 turn. Player 1, something that we introduced this year to tell you all viewers about this. It's you versus 11 smart FFPC computer players, essentially. You can win money, you can win free entries in the main event and in the Big Gorilla. 3 different speeds that you could go slow, medium, and fast. Play FFPC Player 1 today. You can use it as a mock draft. You can use it as a tool to win money. Either one's available at myffpc.com. Skattebo, Joe, is just kind of a fun guy to own, too. Like Joe King is piping in on YouTube right now. Got a Skattebo highlight video in my feed today. I wanted to run through a wall after watching. He's fun to watch. I go back to the Arizona State stuff. I didn't really watch him a whole lot that year, but in the college football playoff, was that against Texas, where he threw for a touchdown, ran for a touchdown, caught a touchdown. I'm like, God, this guy's awesome. I can't wait for him to get to the NFL. Now he's just got to stay healthy.
Well, it drove my wife nuts because I think Joe Tessitore was calling that game. I believe the one you were talking about. And the entire broadcast was like, Skattebo, 3rd and 10, Skattebo. Like, and so my wife, and then she, my wife's an academic. I'm not sure she's, overly impressed with the shared brain cells between Cam Skattebo and Jaxson Dart, but nonetheless, from a fantasy football perspective, the question I have about Skattebo, and I don't know what the answer to this, so you should probably get an injury expert on to talk about this. For a guy like Skattebo, who is not explosive, explosiveness is not the part of his game, right? Even at his best, if you loved this guy coming out, you even admitted that he wasn't explosive. Is like a serious leg injury, does that affect them less because they weren't explosive in the first place? Or does it just take below average explosiveness and just make him completely useless because now he has none whatsoever? And that I don't know what the answer to that question is, because I know it's a different injury, but Javonte Williams in Denver, right? When this guy came out, we thought he was an explosiveness, bell cow, everything type of player. His second year, he gets hurt, and it takes him years to get back to even what he was in Dallas last year, which was the best version of, for 2 years in Denver after that injury, he was a plotter. And now in Dallas, I don't think anybody would call him explosive, but he was a little bit more of a plotter. Is Cam Skattebo is there going to be a drawback to both him and also Quinshon Judkins, who has more explosiveness than Skattebo, but isn't exactly TreVeyon Henderson himself? That's a question I don't have an answer to, but I have just like a positive feeling about Skattebo and I on him coming back and reclaiming kind of that backfield.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm not going to drive his ADP up at all, but certainly where he's going, that 3-4 turn or early in the 4th round, makes a lot of sense to grab.
If he gets into the early 3rd or 2nd, forget about it. I won't be drafting him there. But right. Where he is right now, totally fine with it. We have him projected running back 17, and I think that's just about right for him.
His teammate, who he's sharing brain cells with, Jaxson Dart, we'll talk about him here, or at least the combined shared brain cells between Dart and Skattebo is certainly a talking point. But Dart specifically, his head coach was talking about him this week as well. John Harbaugh says he can, quote, live in a lot of different worlds. We can run RPOs. We can run quarterback-driven runs. And what's great about this, Joe, is I thought it was great to see what Dart did on the ground last year. Now, I really would have liked to see him go out of bounds and slide more, but the rushing talent intrigued me. This year, I didn't know what to expect. Obviously, with Nagy and Harbaugh, it's different than what it was last year with Brian Daboll. And I didn't know how they would address Dart. Are they going to let him run at all? And it sounds like not only are they going to let him run, they're going to design stuff for him to run. We look for the Konami code, as Rich Rebar always says. We look for the Konami code with these rushing quarterbacks. There's a significant rushing floor with Jaxson Dart, and maybe there's even a good ceiling there too as well. I don't know about the health of Neighbors, but it's nice to know that even if his pass catchers aren't exactly world beaters, and maybe some of them are being a little underrated here, Dart can do it with his legs as well. In the FFPC Big Gorilla right now, my friend, he is going as quarterback, and this is Jaxson Dart I'm talking about. He is going as quarterback 12 at the 1201, one spot ahead of one Patrick Mahomes. How do you feel about Jaxson Dart this year, Skattebo's teammate?
Who is going like with the 4 quarterback picks ahead of Jaxson Dart?
Right before Dart, you have Purdy about a round ahead. Same thing with Prescott. And then about a round and a half ahead of that, it's Lawrence and Herbert.
Okay. These are the FFPC are sharp drafters because on a lot of platforms, you'll see like Jaxson Dart going ahead of Brock Purdy and Dak Prescott. And John Hansen, obviously the founding partner at Fantasy Points, has taken to calling his favorite quarterback target this year Trevor Herbert. Or Justin Lawrence. I'm not sure which one he prefers right now, but see, I was about to say, come in and say, man, he's going at quarterback 9 and he's going ahead of Purdy and Prescott, and then I'm going to say I'm completely out. I think quarterback 12 is fine. I think it's totally fine. I'm fine with it. I'm not like, oh my God. But for the rushing upside, I think it's totally fine. The concern I have is, do we have proof that Jaxson Dart is any good? Like, he played for 8 games? On the other hand, does he need to be good for fantasy? And I think at the quarterback position, we've seen that maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have to be really good for fantasy. Nonetheless, where's Bo Nix going?
He's going lower. In fact, he has tumbled a little bit. I'm looking at, this is Big Gorilla ADP here over the last 5 days. You have Nix falling all the way to quarterback 15. He's not going until the 13th round right now.
Yeah, I would prefer that at cost than to Jaxson Dart. But you could get both of them, quite frankly. I mean, there's really no reason you can't. I'm fine with Jaxson Dart at that price. I don't want to say he's overvalued. I don't want to say he's undervalued. I think it's a completely fair price.
Joe, with just in regards to quarterbacks, I'm going to get to Baker Mayfield in a second. Quarterbacks have been falling, quite a bit this year. It's a deep position. Some of the players I had met, so Josh Allen in the Big Gorilla, not being selected on average until the 4th round. Lamar Jackson is the quarterback 2. He's not going until the end of the 6th round. You can technically get a top 12 quarterback right now in the 12th round. How do you feel, and how would you be handling quarterbacks in drafts this year? Would you be zigging when people are zagging to get one of these elite guys, or are you fine with waiting and grabbing a couple of these guys in the 10 to 15 range?
Yeah, I actually my first instinct is just buy in the 10 to 15 range. There's guys there that I'm calling the mobile middle class. Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, these guys are in contention to run for 300, 400 yards, right? Trevor Lawrence, I think, had an outsized number. I think he had 8 rushing touchdowns last year. I don't expect that to happen again. Caleb Williams can run. Obviously, Jaxson Dart can run. Bo Nix can run. Tyler Shuck has underrated mobility. Kyler Murray obviously can run, and he's going later. So my instinct for these quote-unquote cheat code quarterbacks is just let me just wait, And even if you don't like the cheat code, well, Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff are going off the board in the double-digit round. So my first instinct is that. But I had a discussion with Drew Davenport on on our program on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel, we just dropped an auction draft strategy video. And obviously that's geared to auctions, but I think you can apply it to normal drafts. What if the answer to all of these, like, these consternations about personnel changes, the consternations about 12 personnel and 13 personnel. Ryan Heath at Fantasy Points did an article where he examined the death of fantasy wide receiver twos. Why is that happening? What if the answer is just to draft Josh Allen? And then in a place like the FFPC, obviously, where you have to advance through the weeks and you need to have that unique ceiling. Well, look at Josh Allen. As Scott Barrett pointed out, over the last 3 seasons, his 7 best games, he averages roughly 42 fantasy points per game. That's 7 fantasy points per game more than Lamar Jackson's 7 best games. Over the last 6 seasons, he's finished as the quarterback 1 4 times and the quarterback 2 twice. Never lower. Never lower. So, I think it's all well and good when we're sitting in a room. And obviously FFPC drafters are smart guys. I do FFPC drafts every year. Tom Brawley and I do a couple of teams every year together. And sometimes I love it. Oh, we're sitting there and we're like, oh, let's just wait on quarterback. Oh, we'll get Dak later. We'll get Justin Herbert later. We'll get Purdy later. And then you're like, yeah. And then you get to week 13 and you need to win to get into the next round. And Josh Allen is staring across from you. And you're like, there's 35 points right there. So, I think Josh Allen could be in FFPC, especially a guy who gives you that you can't win, you can't advance without him kind of ceiling. Maybe that's the answer. So I won't mind drafting Josh Allen if the price is right. The price has to be right. But I would say 90% of my drafts, I'm going to chicken out and I'm going to do just the same thing as I typically always do and focus on that middle class of quarterbacks, which is so deep this year.
Yeah, and that's typically how I do it too. Although I will say, after hearing you talk about Josh Allen, everything that Scott and Ryan have said and researched, I do think there is some value into taking him in the 4th round in a managed format.
For sure.
Where you have to set your lineup every week. Whereas, if you take Dart and Mahomes or Stafford and Nix or, Goff and Kyler Murray, there's a very real possibility that you end up starting the wrong guy, on any given week.
Right.
You play it that way. And you don't have to worry about that with Josh Allen.
And so it takes a decision out of your hands. I think for a lot of weeks in the FFPC, now I think most people, because the FFPC benches are so deep, will carry 2 quarterbacks, but especially because you can run into the problem of not being able to get one off the waiver wire when your starter's on. Josh Allen's on bye in week 7 this year, so you need one then. But I think when you're drafting a Bo Nix plus a Tyler Shuck, let's just say that's your combination, I think your hope is when you do that one of those guys becomes unassailable. One of those guys, starting him becomes self-evident. But I would say it works out that way very little bit of the time. Ever since, people started identifying, Lamar Jackson's MVP year, he was so cheap for fantasy. Jalen Hurts' first season for fantasy, he was so cheap, getting drafted at the back end of the top 12. Maybe Jaxson Dart's that guy. But I think we've gotten a lot smarter about pricing quarterbacks right now, and you can see the kind of the foibles of the guys who are going in the mid to later rounds.
Well, to that end, talking about pricing quarterbacks here, I think this price is wrong on Baker Mayfield, and I'm going to tell you why in a second. Rick Stroud from the Tampa Bay Times quoted a piece in an upcoming episode of the Netflix show Quarterback that Baker Mayfield said last year, from week 2 through the rest of the season, he was playing with a sprained MCL and a sprained PCL. He also got a biceps contusion in his throwing arm and had a shoulder injury in his non-throwing arm. Now, while I'd like to say, that's probably the reason that the Buccaneers were so bad offensively last year, I think that's just one reason, Joe. I think not only was Mayfield hurt, offensive line was decimated in Tampa. Godwin went down. Egbuka went from being a world beater to then he gets that leg injury, and he just has to hobble his way through the rest of the season, not to mention what Bucky Irving went through last year. This is a Baker Mayfield question as much as a Buccaneers question for you. I feel like the Buccaneers are being depressed in drafts right now because of how it ended up last year. Recency bias is something that plagues us all, even FFPC high stakes players. I think that Mayfield is mispriced at quarterback 19 in the 14th, 15th round right now. And I feel like the rest of these Buccaneers too, I think are going to have some positive regression coming this year. How do you feel about Mayfield and the Buccaneers offense in 26?
Yeah. I feel like I probably haven't been drafting them enough. As a whole, I'm not really sure how to treat Chris Godwin as he's another year older. I am anticipating a bounce back from Emeka Egbuka. I just haven't found myself in a position to be clicking on Emeka Egbuka's name quite a bit, whether it's just been where I'm drafting, the build that I have. But he's one of those guys I'm not opposed to. I think, Eric, you're very familiar with the fact that even if you do a ton of drafts a year, there's just some players who you have nothing against, who you just don't end up clicking for whatever reason. Egbuka has been one of those players for me this year, and I'm a little scared that I haven't been doing that. The one Buccaneer I have drafted an absolute metric ton of is Kenny Gainwell.
Gainwell, too. I mean, so here's the thing with that Buccaneers backfield. If Gainwell's going to be, he comes off the 70-catch season in Pittsburgh, if he's going to be the pass catcher there, and if Sean Tucker is going to be the goal line guy there, I'm having a hard time drafting Bucky Irving at his ADP right now, which as I look at the big gorilla and see Bucky Irving over the last 5 days is going off as running back 25. He has fallen to the mid-fifth round. I don't know, man. I'm seeing a very, very small way. You got to thread the needle with Irving still at that ADP.
Yeah, and we actually have him above, and he's been a player I have not been drafting at all. We have him above ADP with his projection right now. We have him RB20, and our projections guru Chris Wecht has kind of owed that a lot to just the offensive issues in general, the issues with Baker, the fact that Tristan Wirfs dealt with injury, Mike Evans dealt with injury, Godwin obviously was in and out of the lineup. But the thing I keep coming back to with Kenny Gainwell is the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers had a running back in this offense the last 3 years in Rachaad White, who caught 64, 51, and 40 passes. He had 6 receiving touchdowns in 2024. Over that same span, he had 272 carries, 144 carries, and 132 carries, okay? So this was a player, yes, his numbers were declined every year, but this was a guy they used a ton. They used Rachaad White. They let him walk for a contract that he signed with the Washington Commanders that is cuttable. It's a 1 year, $2 million deal. If the Commanders decide that, Rachaad White, obviously, like the Buccaneers felt, doesn't have all that much left, they can just cut him. And they signed Kenny Gainwell over this player who knew their offense, who had played in their offense, who had averaged over 200 touches per season over the last 3 years. And they signed Gainwell to a contract for 2 years, $12 million. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot in NFL terms, but when a lot of running backs are signing 1 year deals, like Rachaad White, like Rico Dowdle had to sign, they gave Kenny Gainwell multiple years. And I do know one thing about Kenny Gainwell, is he is a coach's pet. Coaches love this guy wherever he goes. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago in Philadelphia, 3 years ago at this point, remember, they came out in week 1 against the Patriots, and everybody was excited about DeAndre Swift in that offense. And everybody's like, why is Kenny Gainwell the starter? Why is he getting all these snaps? And the fact of the matter is, Kenny Gainwell catches the ball well. He runs hard. He's a hard charger. He pass protects. He plays on third downs. He does everything that coaches love. I think Kenny Gainwell's going to play. Why do I think Kenny Gainwell's going to play? Because every coach that has had Kenny Gainwell has played him. Every offensive coordinator that has had Kenny Gainwell has played him. And remember, offensive coordinator in Philadelphia is like Defense Against the Dark Arts at Hogwarts. They don't keep them. So whether they get fired, or they die, or they're promoted, and they run through those offensive coordinators. Yet every single one used Kenny Gainwell, maybe more than you thought they should use. Last year, he ends up in Pittsburgh, wins their team-voted MVP award. Now, if Kenny Gainwell's your team MVP, that probably says a lot about your team. But this is the kind of guy who coaches love. Todd Bowles is an old-school coach. He is a defensive-minded coach. if there's a guy on this team who's going to earn snaps by playing hard, it's going to be Kenny Gainwell. And I cannot in good faith draft Bucky Irving at cost when I know Kenny Gainwell is going to get so many of those high calorie touches.
Gainwell has been climbing, but he's still significantly behind Irving. He's about 2.5 rounds behind Bucky Irving. Running back 32 at the 803 is where you can get Gainwell in the big.
I don't want him to go too much higher than that. But that's still okay in my mind. That's still okay.
Would you be, would you, if he climbed up to the Ramondre Stevenson, Jonathan Brooks tier, would you be taking him there?
Well, I'm not taking Jonathan Brooks at the Jonathan Brooks tier, so I'm not. I hate to say this because it makes me sound so square, but I'm a Chuba Hubbard guy this year. It's a green beans and peas pick, man. It's put them on your plate, get your roughage, get your vitamin C or vitamin whatever vitamins in vegetables, and get your fiber, and it'll fill you up even though you probably want a cheeseburger. That's what Chuba Hubbard is this year. Kenny Gainwell, I think once you get into like the 7th round, that starts to get a little precarious because ultimately, even though he was the Steelers MVP last year, Kenny Gainwell has proven, in as much as coaches love him, that he is not a full-time running back. He just cannot do it. That is not his game, and I don't think he ever will be. So I think once you get into like the 7th round, you're drafting a old school like satellite back who you want to put in your flex play a little bit too early, in my opinion. I think he's kind of at ceiling right now. Whereas on the other hand, even though I'm not drafting Bucky Irving at ADP, we do have a year of Bucky Irving being a bell cow, which we don't have from Kenny Gainwell.
Yeah, which is true. Something that we'll be following. I think I've already been following those two guys in ADP more so than a lot of other running backs because I think it's fascinating the way that Gainwell has been rising and Irving's been falling. Those guys both have NFL teams right now in Tampa, right? One guy who does not have a current NFL team, Joe, is Stefon Diggs, who, according to Jeremy Fowler, at least 5 teams have been checking in on him as his availability is still out there and he is unsigned. It'd be nice if we could get him on a team ASAP so we knew how to draft not only Diggs, but the players and the other pass catchers on his new team. We don't have that right now. So what's the proper way to be handling him in drafts? Joe, right now, wide receiver 53 in the 11th round is where Diggs is at. It's after Concepcion. It's after Higgins. It's before Dobbs, before Coker. I think it's a risk worth taking there. How do you feel about it?
That's completely fine. He's being drafted as wide receiver 5. And he's out there. Apparently he said something like, I'm better than every team's wide receiver 2. Mm-hmm. Honestly, I'm not sure that's that far-fetched for Stefon Diggs. Like, obviously, I don't think he's washed. Look, this is a guy who ran a route on fewer than 70% of the Patriots dropbacks last year. Now, Drake May led the NFL. I think he was either first or second in the NFL in dropbacks. So Stefon Diggs still ran a lot of routes. But he put up over 1,000-yard season while effectively playing in a part-time role. Okay, that's a pretty damn effective player. And I don't think any team at this point who wants to sign Stefon Diggs is going to sit there and say, oh, we need him to go for 1,100 yards. You're probably being delusional. I think a team that signs Stefon Diggs is like, can he give me 60 for 800 and 6 touchdowns? Can he give me 50 for 750 and 5 touchdowns? That would be pretty good. I'd like that if I'm a team, and I'll take that on my roster at this point. Again, he was a player I was out on last year. He proved me wrong. I would think at his current cost, risk worth taking. Obviously, he could end up anywhere. Washington, who when Stefon Diggs sounds like the sane one to sign between him and Brandon Ayuk, that shows you where Brandon Ayuk is right now. I would love to see him from a fantasy perspective with the Raiders. I don't know if he wants to go to the Raiders. He just got a taste of playing in a Super Bowl for the first time in his career. So I would think that he maybe wants to sign with a contender. But once he signs, Eric, let's just say he signs in Washington, where their other number 1 receiver is already over 30, Terry McLaurin, and dealt with injuries last year. His ADP is going to go through the roof.
Yep.
So now's the time on Stefon Diggs. And if he doesn't sign anywhere, guess what? He was your 5th receiver. Who cares?
Yes, exactly. If I could pin you down here to a team, the 4 teams that come to mind when I think about Diggs, where he could seriously go. You mentioned Washington. I'll throw in Indianapolis. I'll throw in Kansas City, and I'll throw in Baltimore there as well. For fantasy purposes, would you be hoping that he goes to one of those situations more so than the others, because it's going to be best in this spot?
Kansas City. I still am puzzled. How did Kansas City do absolutely nothing at the wide receiver position this offseason? They know that Rashee Rice is a threat to push an old lady into traffic at any moment. Their MVP quarterback is coming off of a torn ACL. He had to do it all himself last year. He had the most rushing yards of his career. Well, you would hope he doesn't have to do that again this year. Now, what that has done, honestly, for me, Travis Kelce's 37 years old, right? Like, what are we doing here, guys? Do you know what that's done for me? Boy, have I added a lot of last-round Tyquan Thornton to my portfolio.
Yeah.
Because he was better than Xavier Worthy last year. Now, I know Xavier Worthy had his injury problems. And I don't even like Xavier Worthy, but at his ADP, where is he going with the
super late? So I'll give you the baby gorilla right now, which is basically the same thing as the big gorilla, $125 then, or $100K grand prize in that one. Wide receiver 47 at the 10.
You know what? I don't even like Xavier Worthy. Isn't that a valid price to play for the guy though? Because I'm just sitting here thinking, I was like, I have to presume that there's at least somebody with brains in Kansas City, right? They've won 3 Super Bowls, and yes, Patrick Mahomes is a part of that. But they put in, there's elite quarterbacks or presumed elite quarterbacks around the league who haven't sniffed the success Patrick Mahomes has had. So you presume they're doing a good job putting good teams around Patrick Mahomes. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, why were they not in on A.J. Brown? Mm-hmm. Why were they not in on Jalen Waddle? Maybe they were, but just got outbid. But is that just like a tacit admission by them that they think Xavier Worthy and Tyquan Thornton are better than we think they are? Maybe, but also it still just doesn't make sense to me that your number 1 receiver over the last couple of years, not named Travis Kelce, who now is the vaunted catch and fall down tight end of like the late career Jason Witten ilk. Your number 1 receiver, not only is he coming off a serious injury, by the way, Rashee Rice, he's a flight risk. I just don't understand why they didn't do something. So I think from a fantasy standpoint, the best spot for Stefon Diggs is Kansas City. I truly believe that. And Baltimore is fine too. Actually, I think there's a great opportunity in Baltimore. But Baltimore's been kind of Tennessee light over the last decade of like where old receivers go to die.
Oh yeah.
Baltimore always just gets the guy. I guess they had success back in the day with Derek Mason and Anquan Bolden, but now it's like, oh, DeAndre Hopkins has signed there, yay! Des Bryant signed there, yay! I don't know if I could shake that feeling if Baltimore signs Stefon Diggs, but both Baltimore and Kansas City would provide, I would think, chances to contend for Stefon Diggs while also giving him a solid target share.
I want to, we've been talking wide receivers here, Joe. I want to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about some AFC West running backs. I'm going to give you some FFPC ADPs. You let me know how you feel about them at that price. It's specifically almost exclusively AFC running backs, and we'll get into some other positions as well. He's Joe Dolan from SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio and Fantasy Points. I'm Eric Balkman. You're watching FFPC Insider Access. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in just under 2 minutes.
What's up, everyone? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm, and I want to talk to you about my very favorite format ever, and that's best ball. Yes, we all love to draft. Drafting is the best part of fantasy football, but if you do too many drafts in too many real leagues, you end up with too many lineups, too many trades, too many waivers. It's a lot of work. There's a solution to that, and it's called best ball. You go in, you draft your team, and then you're done. You don't need to set a lineup, no trades. The algorithm optimizes your lineup for you every single week so you can draft as many teams as you want. And the best place to play right now is myffpc.com, where they have the $125 buy-in with a $400,000 prize, and also a $35 buy-in super flex league with a $400,000 prize. Get in over at myffpc.com. Use promo code ALARM when you deposit for the first time. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more, and you can start drafting teams now and draft all summer long without having to worry about lineups or trades or any of that. Get in there at myffpc.com and start drafting best ball teams now through the rest of the summer.
Great stuff there from Andrew Cooper from Fantasy Alarm. Don't forget the FFPC Best Ball Tournament, just $125 to enter. We added $100,000 onto that grand prize this year. It was $300K in 2025. It's $400,000 this year. And even if you don't win it, you come in second place, you still get $100,000. Register now, myffpc.com, myffpc.com is where to go for the FFPC Best Ball Tournament. Being joined tonight on FFPC Insider Access by one Joe Dolan from Fantasy Points, and of course, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. You hear him every Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 7 to 9 with Paul Kelly. Fantasy Football Morning, right? That's the name of the show, Joe?
Fantasy Football Morning, presented by Fantasy Points, is the
presented
official
by Fantasy
name of the
Points.
program.
I see. I forgot the most crucial part of that title. This is why you're a professional. We're going to check into that professional mind of yours right now. I want to do a fantasy price check for you and how you feel about these guys at their current ADP. I'll use FFPC Big Gorilla. Right now, it's the format and the tournament that we have going off the most. I got probably, I don't know, just under 3 dozen drafts of sample size here over the last 5 days. I want to go to Omarion Hampton first because there are a lot of people out there very excited about Mike McDaniel coming to the Chargers. We know what he was able to do with Devon Achane. However, Achane and Hampton, they are not the same type of running back. Although they're very talented, they are a little bit different. Hampton right now, running back 7 at the 204, ironically one spot ahead of Mike McDaniel's old running back, Achane, who is at running, well, I should say that, Chase Brown, Achane, and Barkley right after Hampton right now. How do you feel, and how much of a target would Hampton be at the 204 for you this year? And I think when you answer this, Joe, it's going to tell me kind of what you think about this Chargers offense in general.
I say fade a Mike McDaniel running back at your own peril. Now, I do know a lot of people in the best ball streets are Keaton Mitchell bros, and I can see people drafting Keaton Mitchell, and I can understand that as well, given the kind of profile that Devon Achane has had success with. But nonetheless, Omarion Hampton, first round tape, first round pedigree, unfortunately just finally got like the chance to play a big role when Najee Harris got hurt and then got hurt himself. And we never really got to see the best of Omarion Hampton. And last year, quite frankly, I don't know if we were ever going to see the best of Omarion Hampton with the just awful BS luck that the Chargers offensive line had. Believe me, I like to poke fun at like the Justin Herbert hype as much as the next guy. There's always a quarterback in the NFL that like the cognoscenti has fallen in love with who hasn't actually accomplished anything in terms of like team accolades. But Justin Herbert is far, far, far more accomplished and more talented than anybody that Mike McDaniel worked with the Miami Dolphins. And that's going to open up this entire offense, I think. And Omarion Hampton, if this is a top 5 offense in the NFL, I'm not sure I would be that shocked. They do have talent at wide receiver if you squint. Obviously, I know Ladd McConkey had a very disappointing year last year, but we have guys on staff who are high on Quinshon Judkins and like what he was able to do last year. So I think I'm in on Omarion Hampton. I wouldn't say he's one of my favorite picks in the second round, but I'm not outright fading him. I actually kind of consider him in that kind of a Mecca Egbuka, not just because they're both second year players, but because the fact that I'm not against clicking on his name. I just haven't found myself doing it a lot just because of where I've drawn picks or the builds that I've had. It just hasn't been happening. Maybe I get somebody just likes him more than I do and picks him earlier. Yeah, I'm not sure.
I don't have Quinshon Judkins on the show sheet, but as long as we're talking Chargers, I'll bring him up right now because I know, as you just mentioned, some of your colleagues are high on. I know Brett Whitefield loves Quinshon Judkins this year. But how does Joe Dolan specifically handle Quinshon Judkins when he is climbing the FFPC Big Gorilla draft board? Right now, over the last 5 days, he's all the way into the top 40 now, Joe. Wide receiver 39, knocking on the door in the 7th round.
Oh, man. Quinshon Judkins, where do we have? Okay, we have him projected at wide receiver 42, so that's not that outrageous of a projection for Quinshon Judkins to get him into wide receiver 39. Because now look at some of the guys who we have ahead of him that I wonder if they're behind him on the FFPC ADP. Josh Downs, I'm guessing, is behind Quinshon Judkins. We have Josh Downs one spot ahead.
Yeah, he is. I'm sure he's behind. He's got to be. I don't even see him on here. He is. He is behind. He is behind Johnston. Yes.
Okay, where's he going?
Josh Downs is 8'12", wide receiver 42.
Okay, all right, that's fair. We have Wan'Dale Robinson ahead of Quinshon Judkins. It just feels like nobody wants to draft Wan'Dale Robinson.
He is 904, wide receiver 44.
Yeah, I like that pick as well. Jordan Addison, I think I prefer Quinshon Judkins and Jordan Addison. Alec Pierce, I'm not really sure what to think about Alec Pierce right now. He signed a $100 million contract this offseason, but he had a procedure. Obviously, he's a guy who big plays are a huge part of what he does. Let me just say this. Not everything needs to be a hot take. I think Quinshon Judkins fine at wide receiver 39. I don't know how much higher he can go and me say that about him, though. But I feel like the FFPC drafters have kind of identified the right spot.
He might be one of those guys, too, where I feel much more comfortable drafting him in best ball rather than playing roulette with him every week, where some weeks he's 2 for 25, some weeks he's 6 for 87 and 2 touchdowns, you know what I mean? Or 6 for 117 and 2 touchdowns. Yeah. Seems to be his milieu, as it were, when it comes to how he puts up numbers. But Johnston's an interesting guy. We'll be watching him going forward. Back to the running backs here. Ashton Jeanty is another guy that it seems like high-stakes players have become more and more comfortable with as the last month or two has gone on. Comfortably in the first round, Joe. I mentioned at the top of the program, right behind Jonathan Taylor. He's at the 110 at running back 5 right now. And if you look at what his numbers were last year, when you consider what you think he did in your mind, at least I'm speaking for me specifically, when I think about what he did in my mind, and then I look at the numbers, I'm like, you know what? Not only was he not that bad, he was actually really good when you consider the offensive line that was in front of him. I'm pretty bullish on Jeanty in year 2.
Yeah, so this is where is a perfect example of the fantasy player getting smarter year over year than they were just even like 5 to 10 years ago. Jacob Gibbs, using the from obviously the Fantasy Football Today newsletter and CBS Sports, he's a friend of Fantasy Points, and he loves using the Fantasy Points data suite for his research. He did some amazing work breaking down Ashton Jeanty. Here are the stats for Ashton Jeanty. Number 1, among 115 running backs with 250 rushes in a season over the last 13 seasons, Ashton Jeanty was 115th in yards before contact before rush, dead last. Okay, now, can that mean Ashton Jeanty is so patient that it's a detriment? Sure it can. I'm not 100% sure of it myself, but I think you and I would both agree that on the surface that sounds like a Raiders offense and a Raiders offensive line stat. Okay, so frame what I'm about to say through that lens on Ashton Jeanty. That among like basically every running back in the Twitter era, he is dead last among running backs in yards before contact per rush. And just one season, obviously, but his season was dead last of those. Here are the numbers from Fantasy Points data last year on Ashton Jeanty when he got 1 yard before being contacted. On runs with 1 yard before contact last year, Bijan Robinson averaged 6.8 yards per carry. Ashton Jeanty averaged 6.78.
Wow.
On runs with 1 yard before first contact, Bijan Robinson had a 71% success rate. Ashton Jeanty had a 71% success rate. On runs on which 1 yard before contact was opened, Bijan Robinson forced 25% of tacklers to miss. Ashton Jeanty forced 25% of tacklers to miss. And yards after contact. Okay, so you got to stack this on top. Okay. On runs in which he was contacted 1 or more yards down the field. So the first contact comes when Ashton Jeanty has a runway. Bijan Robinson averaged 2.8 yards after contact per rush on such runs. Ashton Jeanty averaged 3.4. That was the best in the NFL. So on runs in which he got a yard of runway or more, nobody averaged more yards after being contacted by the first defender than Ashton Jeanty. So on those runs, he was equal to or better than Bijan Robinson in those categories. And that is a really, really hard thing for me to shake, because Ashton Jeanty might have just proven through the season that he had last year and through the advanced metrics that we have on him that all of the people screaming, you cannot draft a running back in the top 10 until you have the right infrastructure around him, he might have just proven those people right to the fullest extent of the matter. Because we have stats that show why he failed because of infrastructure, but we also have stats that say when that infrastructure was good enough to provide him room to run, he excelled. So I am in on Ashton Jeanty this year. I really wish the fantasy football, the average fantasy football mind isn't as sharp as it is now. Because this a year, 2 years, like let's say 5 years ago, this is the profile of a running back who's going at the back end of the second round, third round. Oh, this overhyped rookie on a bad team. I don't want anything to do with him. His statistics, his fantasy production last year is not a first round profile. And we've found out year over year that the thing that best predicts fantasy points per game the next season is fantasy points per game the previous season. Mm-hmm. Ashton Jeanty did not live up to his hype, but we have enough numbers at fantasy points to show the extenuating circumstances were so miserable that maybe there actually was a generational style running back in there somewhere. You know, you ever see Hook, where like the little the movie Hook with Robin Williams plays Peter Pan, and the one Lost Boy is like going like this to Robin Williams' face. And then he like goes like this, and he's like, there you are, Peter. Like, I feel like when Ashton Jeanty got a hole, you're like, there you are, Peter. There's the guy. There's the guy who was drafted in the top 10. And I do remember doing this song and dance with Trent Richardson back in the day, which is Nightmare Fuel, because I loved Trent Richardson coming out of Alabama. But I don't think we had the advanced statistics to the level we do right now and the understanding of that. And also, I think Ashton Jeanty, I think one of the big things for Trent Richardson was just flat out motivation. I don't think he loved playing football. I don't get that impression from Ashton Jeanty from everything that I've read and heard about him. So I am in on Ashton Jeanty. I understand why people are not, though, if they don't like paying this particular price for him. Because again, statistically, this is not a first-round profile. Situation-wise, though, Clint Kubiak offense, the top guy behind him is a fourth-round rookie. The offensive line should be far improved with better health and the signing of Tyler Linderbaum. The fact that they have, I guess the fact that they have nothing at wide receiver is probably a detriment to him. Nonetheless, I expected that Clint Kubiak's going to scheme it up for him. Better quarterback play. Let's throw that out there. Whether it's Kirk Cousins or Fernando Mendoza, you would anticipate it's better than Geno Smith last year. I mean, addition by subtraction, Chip Kelly is one of the biggest charlatans in the history of the NFL. I think there's a lot working in Ashton Jeanty's favor. Not the least of which is the fact that they've basically said, 300 300 touches would be nice. We think we have a guy who can do it all. I mean, Eric, I guess I'm the guest here, but I'm tired of hearing myself talk. You've got a little Raiders chain back there behind you. So I guess you're a hurting loyalist, but what's your feeling?
Okay, so just to explain the chain, it's a joke with a high stakes player who my Friday night co-host Farrell Elliott is a massive Raiders fan, and so when we made a trip out to Las Vegas for the FFPC live events, one of the high stakes players got me that chain, and every time we talk Raiders on the show with Farrell, I put the Raiders chain on. Now I will say this with Jeanty, number one, those numbers blew me away. I did not realize how close they were aligned with Bijan Robinson's from last year. I was already in on Jeanty. I think he makes a lot of sense at the end of the first round. But here's an unfair question that I'll ask you, and maybe there's no correlation here, and if that's fine, then okay. But I'm asking you to put yourself in the minds of high-stakes players here. Do you feel, because of the year Jeanty had last year, and I'm talking strictly from a fantasy production statistical standpoint of what he actually did with yards, touchdowns, fantasy points, do you think that's why a guy like Jeremiyah Love has now fallen to the third round this year? We can't take advantage of Jeanty, right? We can't take advantage of what this would have meant 5 years ago. But maybe what we can do is take advantage of Jeremiyah Love in the third round because of what Ashton Jeanty went through last year. And that's how people are unfairly penalizing Love right now.
Yeah, so now I'm wondering if we've gotten to the point where Jeremiyah Love might actually start to enter my mindset. Where is he? What RB is he going off the board as if he's going in like the third round?
13.
Right, we have him projected at RB 15 right now. He's behind Breece Hall and Josh Jacobs. I'm guessing both of those guys are after him on FFPC.
Yes.
Okay. So I would guess the top 12 that we have ahead of Jeremiyah Love are also the top 12 going ahead of him on FFPC. Gibbs, Robinson, Taylor, McCaffrey, Achane, Barkley, Cook, Jeanty, Henry, Walker, Brown, Hampton. Those are the 12 we have going in front of him.
I believe that's right. Yes.
In our projections. So my concern with Jeremiyah Love is the fact that James Conner and freaking Tyler Algier are still on this team. Tyler Algier specifically exists. He was born into this world to be the gristle between the teeth of fantasy football players. Tyler Algier had 204 touches the same year Atlanta used the top 10 running back pick on Bijan Robinson. Are you kidding me?
The problem is we hate this for fantasy for what it means for Robinson and Love, but there's also people out there that hate what it means for Algier, who drafted it. Like, think about the people I was drafting back in January, Joe, and I was very excited about Algier being a starting running back in the NFL, and now he's same thing again, just the train wreck Jeremiyah Love's value.
Yeah, and James Conner's still there. Now, I would anticipate, and I am praying and I am hoping that the Arizona Cardinals do well by James Conner, who's been nothing but a good soldier. And probably, from my money, at least in my mind, the single most underrated fantasy player of my career, because I don't think I've ever been right on James Conner. And I would hope at some point they do something right by him and get him into a new environment. I think there are a couple running back rooms out there that would be much better with a James Conner in it. Just to pivot right now, like Minnesota, I think would probably be interested in a James Conner. I think a Detroit would be interested in a James Conner. As much as I would hate that for Jahmyr Gibbs, we've seen Jahmyr Gibbs break fantasy weeks with David Montgomery on the roster, so that it wouldn't be the biggest worst thing in the world. But getting back to Jeremiyah Love, I actually think, and probably because it would be too hard, it would be nearly impossible for the opposite to be true. I think the Cardinals' offense is going to be much better than the Raiders' offense was last year. I just think it would be hard for it not to be, right? Like, barring offensive line injuries, Jacoby Brissett is a professional quarterback, presuming he ends his holdout. Michael Wilson and Marvin Harrison. Okay, Marvin Harrison's been a disappointment in the NFL so far. I understand that. But they still have professional receivers. Paris Johnson has upside at the left tackle spot. You have Trey McBride, who caught 120 passes last year. This is going to be a better offense. So maybe what Jeremiyah Love might lack in volume, and I guarantee you that there is no way I will be shocked if we aren't screaming some weeks about how little Jeremiyah Love is getting the football. Like, I'm just anticipating that. And I think a lot of the fantasy drafters are anticipating that as well, right? That we're just going to be screaming some weeks, like, get this guy the football. You drafted him 3rd overall, you dumbasses. Like, come on. But I think we are paying the tax there. I actually think his ADP now is fair. Like, I know the kind of profile that a Jeremiyah Love has. That's the kind of guy, even as a rookie, you want to be drafting in the first round, right? We were drafting Jeanty at the 1-2 turn last year. Obviously, Bijan Robinson was a first-round pick his rookie season. Arthur Smith still has not paid for his war crimes that year. Then the Johnny Smith stuff, of course, that always tickled my pickle as well. But I think like we've kind of learned our lessons, and now Jeremiyah Love is going in a spot where he's palatable. If you don't mind, could you let me in on what wide receivers are going around Jeremiyah Love?
In the Big Gorilla over the last 5 days, Love, as I mentioned, is the 301 pick. At that same spot, you are looking right above him, A.J. Brown, Drake London, and then right below him, Nico Collins, Rashee Rice.
Yeah, I kind of like all those guys better than Jeremiyah Love, right? Like... It depends on
Rashee Rice.
Rice is hard because if he plays 16 games this year, I don't foresee a scenario when he doesn't catch 100 passes. Again, Rashee Rice, he's the kind of guy who might throw a baby back into a burning building, but other than that, like I just don't foresee a scenario in which he doesn't catch 100 passes this year. If he plays, of course.
Right. Yeah, and that's the wild card in this. The X factor is we know Rice is good when he's on the field, but how much on the field will he be?
And then it also comes down to just roster build in general, because I very much in the last number of years, and for as long as I can remember, really, have been a absolutely dedicated hero running back drafter. That has not been a great strategy the last couple of years, like the death of the wide receiver too, from a fantasy football perspective. Not getting those running backs who can tilt fantasy weeks has been a big problem. My question is Jeremiyah Love going to have the opportunity to do that? I'm not 100% sure. Now, it's possible he comes out and in week 1, he catches a dump off pass and takes it 45 yards to the house, and you're just like, oh my God. Oh my, like how could the Cardinals possibly take this guy off the field? But Tyler Algier has been a cockroach. I just told you all those stats with Bijan Robinson and how elite he was from the advanced metrics. Tyler Algier scored 8 touchdowns last year. Despite knowing what Bijan Robinson can do, he was given the opportunity to score 8 rushing touchdowns. So what is going to prevent that from happening again, even if it's with a new team?
And by the way, I should mention this is just give a dynasty plug. Jeremiyah Love may be going in the 3rd round of FFPC Big Gorilla drafts right now. He's going in the 1st round of FFPC Dynasty drafts.
Well, he should be, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. FFPC Dynasty drafts available $100 all the way up to $5,000. Register now, myffpc.com. Compete against guys like Joe Dolan. Joe, you got a couple of FFPC Dynasty teams.
I sure do. I got a couple. I'm kind of in tweener mode. Not quite contenders. Not quite rebuilders, but I've been swinging some trades, getting some of those coveted 2027 first-round picks. I've got one in a 1-quarterback dynasty where I believe I have 3 first-round picks next year, which I'm very excited.
Oh, wow.
Let me just show you some of the trades that I just pulled off in that. This was a couple of months ago, But okay, so my team. Let's go to the rosters here so I can evaluate where I'm at. So the team Dolan, and that's me. I now have. Here's what I have. I have 2 firsts and 4 seconds in next year's draft.
Oh man! Nice.
So here is what. And by the way, not for nothing, I actually think I have a decent chance to like maybe be an outside playoff team. But here's a trade I just made because I'm like I just don't think I'm really a contender. I was offered at the beginning of June. I had A.J. Brown. I was traded Mekhi Lemon, a 2027 second, and a 2027 third for A.J. Brown. Effectively, somebody saying, I'm a contender. I don't know what Mekhi Lemon's role is going to be. So let me go trade for A.J. Brown and give up 2 picks in the next year's draft, plus a guy who was a top half of the first round player this year. And I thought that was a very fair trade. And I thought it was a fair trade for both teams. Now it's given me a lot of ammo because in the event that I am a contender this year, I have 4 second round picks. Probably don't want to part too much with the first rounders for next year. But, I've got Ashton Jeanty on the team. I have Kenneth Walker on the team. I have Jordan Love. It's a 1 quarterback. I have Malik Willis. I have Smith and Jigba. I could see things breaking the right way for me, but I probably just don't have enough depth to really put a contending team together this year. Nonetheless, I have Carnell Tate. I just drafted him, so I have some decent names on this roster that I think I can parlay into a good team in the next year or two. But I was pretty happy with how that's built. I think I have enough youth. At the running back and the receiver position. Kenneth Walker just signed a big deal. Maybe if he has a huge year, that's somebody I can flip for a first rounder next year, just to see. So yeah, FFPC, I have some super flex teams. I have some 1 quarterback teams, and I would definitely not consider myself like a dynasty like master strategist, but I have to play it. Like I have to play
it's
it because
fun.
Yeah, and it's my job, So
yeah, and it's your job. Yeah, exactly. I want to go back to the AFC West and talk about the Broncos backfield. RJ Harvey is a guy, and somebody said this to me in one of my other shows the other night. He's like, has there ever been a second-year running back coming off a 12-touchdown season that has gotten more hate than RJ Harvey? And I had to scratch my head. I don't know if there is. Obviously they re-signed Dobbins, who got a pretty healthy deal in Denver. They utilize a day 3 pick on Jonah Coleman, who definitely has his share of truthers out there as well. Harvey and Dobbins going very, very close to each other in big gorilla drafts right now, Joe. And then you're looking at Coleman about 3.5, 4 rounds after those guys. But I specifically about Harvey, how do we make heads or tails out of what he did last year and how likely that is to replicate in 26?
Oh boy. One of the things that I remember Sean Payton saying under Davis Webb, let me see if I can find my tweet that I had about it. First of all, let's talk about the positive with RJ Harvey that I know that is very important here, and it's something that you could obviously hang your hat on if you're an RJ Harvey bro. At Fantasy Points, we chart expected fantasy points. So what we've come up with, obviously, it's something Scott Barrett came up with years ago, but we've tweaked it, obviously, now that we have our advanced metrics. And basically what it is expected fantasy points is exactly what it says. It takes the sum of and the average of every single play that a player runs, and whether it's a run from the opposition's 21-yard line, or a target on 3rd and 4 from the opposition's 18-yard line for a certain position, and it calculates all such plays of that sort over multiple years and calculates the average fantasy points that those plays have scored. Well, and then if you have the exact same play, for instance, let's just say a handoff on 1st and 10 from the 50-yard line, we know what that play is worth on average for fantasy points over hundreds and hundreds and dozens of hundreds of plays over the course of the years. Well, RJ Harvey, this is a niche stat, but just hear me out. Last year, among all running backs, he was first in expected fantasy points per route run. So they gave him juicy role in the passing game. But there is some bad news here when it comes to RJ Harvey. Per Jeff Legwold of ESPN, the Broncos under Davis Webb want to run under center a lot more in 2026. Among running backs with 50 or more under center runs in 2025, RJ Harvey was 5th worst in yards per carry and 10th worst in explosive run rate. On under center carries, which, by the way, the Broncos want to run more of in 2026, J.K. Dobbins was 10th best in yards per carry and 2nd best in explosive runs. So J.K. Dobbins was the far better runner on, apparently, what the Denver Broncos want to make a staple of their offense. And so then that becomes a question, does RJ Harvey play enough in order to capitalize? I wish he did, because I drafted a ton of them in dynasty drafts last year. And, you know, this is one of those things. He had 12 touchdowns as a rookie. Do I remember any of them? all I remember about RJ Harvey's rookie season is how disappointing it was, and the fact that they kept putting Tyler Bidet in there on hurry-up situations. So I cannot, telling me he scored 12 touchdowns last year is staggering. If you were to come out and tell me he scored 1, I would have believed you. It's like, seriously, you know, sometimes I think about how, like, we in the fantasy industry, we just kind of miss the forest through the trees because we are so focused on the here and now that eventually we miss the big picture. That is something that I completely miss the big picture on. It's just kind of like TreVeyon Henderson. Like, if I were to tell you TreVeyon Henderson ran for over 900 yards and 8 touchdowns last year, you probably wouldn't believe me unless you've looked up that number. Because of just how disappointing he was perceived to be on a week-to-week basis. But so we're talking about a really weird rookie running back class. But I'll tell you, Eric, I don't think I'm in on RJ Harvey. And the price is fair if you are. But what do FFPC drafters think about him?
807 for Harvey, 812 for Dobbins. Right now, I mean, there's basically back.
I probably prefer Dobbins.
I for sure do. Even with the 12 listen, we can talk about touchdowns or whatever. They're not the stickiest stat in the world. And then obviously you throw Coleman in here too as well. I just feel like Dobbins probably has to work the least for touches this year in that Denver backfield, right? As long as he's on the field, he's going to get plenty of them. You mentioned how successful he was last year in runs under center, and if Webb keeps the play calling all season in Denver, and they're able to execute the game plan that they want to do each and every week, there's no reason to go back to what they did last year. So to me, it screams of a Dobbins season as long as he's healthy.
Yeah. Which obviously is the big question with J.K. Dobbins.
Always the big question.
I mean, he's never played more than 15 games in a season. That was his rookie year. The last 4 seasons, 8, 1, 13, 10. You know, that you can't rely on J.K. Dobbins. And like you said, throw Jonah Coleman in there. Tyler Bidet's still hanging around for whatever reason. And you know, at the goal line, eventually Sean Payton's going to put Lil Jordan Humphrey in to catch a fade ball. So, it's just it's been a really difficult backfield for me to suss out.
Or he signs Taysom Hill, and then Taysom Hill just does his magic inside the 2. I shouldn't even have said that out loud. Now I feel like I jinxed it, and it's going to happen. Shifting to wide receiver here, we don't need to go through all these guys, but I don't talk about Tetairoa McMillan enough on this show, Joe. And I think it's weird to me that this guy, and he slipped a little bit. He's down to wide receiver 18, still a mid-4th round pick. And I know he had a really successful season last year when you consider that he was a rookie and that offense and the quarterback that he had throwing to him and that he was on. How aggressive are you being with McMillan in the mid-4th round this year when you consider McConkey, Higgins, Neighbors, Waddle, McLaurin, Burden? They're all going right on top of him there.
Okay. Can you list those names for me again?
Yes. Okay. So from the 405 to the 411, all these 7 receivers are basically going back to back to back to back.
Yeah.
It's McConkey and then McMillan. Then you're looking at...
I prefer McConkey.
Okay, you prefer McConkey over McMillan. Higgins or McMillan?
Higgins might be my favorite player to draft in fantasy football this year.
Okay. Neighbors or McMillan?
McMillan. I'm out on Neighbors.
Yeah, I think I am too. Waddle or McMillan?
McMillan.
I think I go Waddle there, but I get it. McLaurin or McMillan?
McLaurin.
I think so too. And then Burden or McMillan?
Oh, God. Burden's another one. am so afraid of missing out this year. The quotes that are coming out from Ben Johnson are just like driving me up a wall.
It's tough, man. I mean, like,
I think I prefer McMillan.
I could go either way on that one. I'll lean McMillan just because you're on the show, and I'll say I agree with you. But McMillan is a guy that, I mean, I don't know. Like, I look at Bryce Young's stats, and I look at what he put up last year. I don't view that necessarily getting significantly better, and I wonder if McMillan's ceiling is capped, where a lot of these guys, like Higgins, for example, God knows what his ceiling could be with Joe Burrow if he stays on the field. I don't have that same fuzzy warmness that I do with Higgins with McMillan. It's just, to me, it's a limited ceiling, and I just worry about him taking that next step to pay off on this ADP.
Yeah. So I mean, T. Higgins, by the way, let's get back to him. This was a player, I wrote him up in an article that we had a little bit earlier this offseason when I was talking about my favorite best ball pick. But he's one of my favorite everything picks. Just because I love the profile, I love what he has done. Listen to these stats about T. Higgins, and I know, I'm sorry, you wanted to do like a wide receiver.
No, it's fine.
Like NFC West.
Go with Higgins.
Okay, Higgins played 12 games in 2026 with a Joe starting at quarterback, whether that be either Burrow or Flacco. In those 12 games, he averaged 13.7 fantasy points per game in half PPR. I wrote this with a best ball slant and underdogs half PPR. That would be the equivalent of Chris Olave, who finished at wide receiver 9. In the 3 games with Jake Browning, he averaged 5.5 fantasy points per game. That was enough to drop him from the equivalent of wide receiver 9 to the equivalent of wide receiver 12. Now, keep that in mind. Joe Burrow missed most of the season. He played 3 games. Higgins missed 2 games, and he played 3 games with Jake Browning, in which he was not even usable as a fantasy asset. And he was still the wide receiver 12 in fantasy points per game. Okay, so keep that in mind. In the same scoring in 2024, he finished as the wide receiver 4. And you can get him in the 4th round? This was a guy who, when there was a competent NFL quarterback last year, was a top 12 wide receiver. To me, that is my favorite pick in like all of fantasy. I don't think the Bengals are going to change their stripes. Not to put a pun on it.
I see what you did there.
They ran the second most plays in the NFL last year with 2 or more wide receivers on the field. They didn't do anything at the tight end position this offseason. Mike Gesicki's effectively a big wide receiver anyway. I know they're talking up Eric All. Maybe they could do more like multi-tight end sets with Eric All and Drew Sample. But look, T. Higgins is out there when they're putting two wide receivers on the field. Anyway, and Higgins has one skill that will get him on the field in the most critical situations, Eric. He's a touchdown scorer. Over the last 2 seasons, Higgins is 6th among all wide receivers with 27 end zone targets. That's one ahead of Jamar Chase. And that's despite T. Higgins missing 7 games over that span. So he's 6th among all wide receivers in end zone targets with multiple different quarterbacks. And he's behind only Davante Adams in converting end zone targets into touchdowns. 12 for T. Higgins, so basically half of his end zone targets result in touchdowns. Davante Adams has turned 20 of them into touchdowns, by the way. Davante Adams is ridiculous. Over the last of the wide receivers in the top 50 of end zone targets in the last 2 seasons, only Davante Adams, Marvin Harrison Jr., believe it or not, and Mike Evans average more than Higgins and 1.0 end zone targets per game. That's not going to change. T. Higgins is my favorite guy to draft it, and he can be part of any plan. He can be you can get him in the freaking 3rd, or he could be your 3rd wide receiver, man.
Yeah. God, this is and now I'm just realizing too, like how I've been handling him in that same area where Higgins has been going. I've been drafting a lot of Waddle, a lot of McLaurin, a decent amount of McConkey. Yeah. And now I'm like, God, I'm screwing the pooch. I got to get back on the Higgins bandwagon.
Where's Brock Bowers going in FFPC ADP right now?
Well, tight end premium scoring, he's high.
Obviously.
Obviously, the first tight end off the board, 106 is where we're looking at right now.
I'm just trying to outline a team here, like an extreme build in which T. Higgins makes sense. Remember, this is a guy who 2 years ago was the wide receiver 4 in half PPR scoring. So like, let's say full PPR because it was probably touchdown dependent. Let's just say he's like wide receiver 6 or wide receiver 7. That was 2 years ago. He was a top 12 wide receiver in half PPR scoring last year. I don't have the exact calculations for full PPR right now. So let's just say you take Brock Bowers in the first round. Okay. And you're like, man, I couldn't pass on Brock Bowers. I could not do it because of the scoring. But now I'm drafting from behind. These running backs are driving me nuts, man. The fact that the running back's been so good the last couple of years. Who's available in the second round at like 2.5, 2.7?
Achane, Barkley, Walker.
Okay. Let's just say you end up with Ken Walker. All right. Brock Bowers, Ken Walker. You're like, I love Ken Walker, but he's never really been a true bell cow. Who are some of the running backs available in the third round?
Well, Breece Hall, but that's at the 304. If you go after that, it's Kyron Williams, Josh Jacobs at 310, 311. Okay.
All right. You're like, you know what? Kyron Williams has been one of the most prolific touchdown scorers in the NFL. I'm not buying the Blake Corum hype. Mm-hmm. I want to get Kyron Williams in that Ram offense. I want that as part of my portfolio here. So let's just say you open your draft, Brock Bowers, Kenneth Walker, Kyron Williams. Oh, crap. Now I need a number one receiver. And T. Higgins is potentially available in the fourth round.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who we know can be a top 10 receiver. I mean, that's a cheat code to me. Any build, that's the kind of player I want. Because he can be your number one receiver on an extreme build like we just put together. Or he can be, if you're like, you know what, I think this 13 personnel crap, it's all a fad. Defenses are going to figure this out. Man, like, I even understand, like, why, like, people are doing this, right? Because T. Higgins has missed 7 games the last 2 seasons, all right? But that's built in. It's built in.
Yeah.
I mean, I also think there's injury risks going ahead of him, right? Like, Malik Neighbors is going ahead. Malik Neighbors already is hurt.
Where do you think, if Higgins did not miss those 7 games, Joe, and the fact that he's going at 407 right now by FFPC Big Gorilla Drafters, where do you think how high would he be?
He's probably in the third round. I would think.
Yeah.
Because I don't think people want to draft a team. I don't want to draft a team's number 2 receiver. Yeah, but statistically, it doesn't matter to me. I mean, the Bengals are going to be pass heavy. Like, this is an offense I want to invest in. And hopefully this is the year Burrow stays healthy. At the very least, they brought Joe Flacco back. So we know that, like, you should get some baseline level of offensive competence in the event Joe Burrow goes down again.
Well, the last player I want to bring up this segment, and I feel like we should because he's the thumbnail for this video, Colston Loveland, who has been rising up ADP. We touched on Burden a little bit, but this Bears offense, as I would say that Ben Johnson has not been as effusive in his praise this offseason with Loveland as he has been with Burden. But we saw what Loveland was able to do at the end of the season when he was fully healthy, over the shoulder injury, over whatever it was, the hip injury that was bothering him. And he went white hot nuclear down the stretch. Tight end 3 at the 210 right now. Is that a spot, again, tight end premium here, Joe, is that a spot you think he's still going to pay off the ADP yet?
So the Bears were one of the 3 tight end revolution teams last year. When the Bears had 3 tight ends on the field in 2025, and I want to thank Ryan Heath for this statistic because he pulled this one, Colston Loveland averaged 4.66 yards per route run. That's sickening. Remember that anything above like 2 is elite. 4.66. And a 53% receiving yards market share. So if the Bears attempted a pass, or let's just say completed a pass, out of 13 personnel, more than half of the yards went to Colston Loveland. In FFPC formats, he should be going rounds ahead of the next Chicago Bear, and I'm guessing that's probably the case, right? At least 2 rounds.
Right now, so Loveland, like I said, is the 210. The next one off the board is Burden at the 411. So just over more than 2 rounds.
Yeah, at least 2 rounds ahead of the next guy off the board, and I mean including DeAndre Swift as well. No, that is a price that I think that's aggressive, but it's a very fair price to pay. for Colston Loveland.
Yeah, I'm drafting a bunch of non-tight end premium leagues, although I'm usually getting him a couple of rounds after the 210 for sure. But he's another player that we'll be watching too. If you want to draft Colston Loveland or any other player with the FFPC Chop Leagues, do so now, myffpc.com. Just don't be the lowest scoring team in your league on any given week, and you win your league. Chop Leagues now available. myffpc.com. They start at $35 and go up from there. We'll take our final break. Joe Dolan from Fantasy Points and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio will join us on the other side. We'll talk about overrated and underrated, perhaps a favorite mid-round target for Joe as well. I don't know what we're going to get into, but I know it's going to be a lot of fun. You're watching FFPC Insider Access. Don't go anywhere.
What's up, guys? Andrew Cooper here of Fantasy Alarm. And guess what? The big gorilla is back over at FFPC. This contest has $5.8 million in prizes and $1 million up top to the winner. And it's got a pretty reasonable buy-in of $350, access to the high-stakes community where the best players play in all of fantasy football. You go out and you win a contest like this, and people are going to remember your name. The FFPC Big Gorilla open right now, and $1 million coming home with you. And if you buy 3 teams right now, you get $50 back off the buy-in. You're going to want to buy multiple buy-ins to this contest because they also have the 7 bananas giveaway if you get the 7th pick multiple times. Check out the details over at myffpc.com on that, but you can get free best ball entries, free entries into the main event, which is a $2,000 buy-in contest, and possibly even, believe it or not, a jungle safari or $50,000. Your choice. I'm picking the safari. So go to myffpc.com, use promo code ALARM if you're a first-time player. They'll give you $25 when you deposit $35 or more, and you can get involved. And you know what? They also listened to you guys and added one more contest, the Baby Gorilla. Can't do $350? Why not do $125 buy-in, $100,000 grand prize, $675,000 prize pool? They have something for everyone over at FFPC, where the best players in the world play fantasy football.
Not only is the Baby Gorilla going strong, the FFPC Superflex Best Ball Tournament going strong as well. Live drafts, slow drafts available right now at myffpc.com. 30-second clocks for the sit and goes as well. Just $35 to enter a $100,000 grand prize at stake. That's the FFPC Superflex Best Ball Tournament. Play now at myffpc.com. We're hanging out with Joe Dolan from Fantasy Points and SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio here tonight on FFPC and Insider Access. I do want to talk about some players we have not touched on yet tonight for this final segment, Joe. We'll lead things off with the mid-round targets, right? Like we've talked a lot about tonight about the studs and the players going in the first few rounds, but it's equally or maybe more important to get these mid-round guys right. Do you have a pick or maybe a couple of guys that you like in the mid-rounds right now of drafts that you've been taking a lot?
Yeah, I think even though I'm an owner of fantasypoints.com with vested shares in the company, I think my ownership would be challenged in a court of law if I didn't mention on a 2-hour live stream that I like Christian Watson. In that Packers offense. What is he, FFP's fifth, sixth round? I'm going to take a wild guess.
He's raising up for sure. I'm looking at it right now. Wide receiver 25, mid fifth, 507.
Okay, I love that. Available as a wide receiver 3. Our guy Brett Whitefield has gone through the tape this offseason and has kind of just dug in, and he thinks Watson might have top 10 ability, in terms of just raw ability at the wide receiver position. I think he's got that level of talent, and they paid him this offseason. And I understand, man, the injury risk is very real for Christian Watson, but the upside there, I'm willing to swallow it. I'm willing to swallow that injury risk because of the upside. But let's just talk FFPC here. But another one of my favorite players, and that I have been drafting this year, and I think is somebody who had an elite level of production and it has an elite profile from a statistical and an advanced statistics perspective is Tucker Kraft. And when he went down last year in November, in all of his full games up to going down, he was tied with Trey McBride in PPR I believe in best ball, so half PPR on Underdog, as the number one tight end in fantasy points per game. Okay. This guy, everything from his statistical profile is Gronkian. Yards after the catch, yards per route run over expectation. Everything is elite for Tucker Kraft. And the thing I like about him is that, well, I don't like that he's coming off an ACL injury. That's not a positive. But the thing I like about him is that this injury occurred in early November. He is going to be 10 months post-op come week 1. I expect that he's probably going to be out there in week 1. And what's his FFPC rate right now?
Tucker Kraft, ironically, going just after Christian Watson, 509 at the tight end.
And that's tight end premium. So, like, if you're somebody here and you're like thinking in your home league, you might get him like the 8th round. I think he's a better version of George Kittle because we know George Kittle has the elite level upside and might be one of the top 10 tight ends in the history of the NFL. But I'm just a little bit skeptical that George Kittle is as far along in his recovery as he says he is. And he's over 30. We know Achilles injuries can be the medical has absolutely improved. I understand that. But this was an injury that just like 5 to 10 years ago was ruining careers. I'm just a little bit skeptical that George Kittle's as far along as he says he is. I think Tucker Kraft is a safer bet at his ADP than George Kittle is at his ADP.
I will say too, like Kittle was going much later. He is rising up now. He's tight end 9 at the 703. So he is about a round and a half roughly behind Kraft. But, man, yeah. Kittle's coming. And by the way, it's not going to stop. As if we keep getting positive reports about Kittle, you're going to see him maybe even surpass Kraft at some point, especially if Kraft starts training camp off on the preseason PUP list too. Joe, what's your level of concern? Because I know you bring up both, you like Watson and Kraft. And if you remember last year, Kraft was doing a lot of damage when Watson was recovering from the ACL. Yeah. And then Watson obviously came on after Kraft went down.
Yeah, well, that's a good question. You know what it's offset by? I'm just going to be completely frank with you. They don't have Dontavion Wicks and Romeo Doubs on this team anymore. And I think that's a pretty damn big factor. Dontavion Wicks, not for nothing, from our average separation score metrics at Fantasy Points, he's damn good. He's a really good separator. So we think he's a really underrated player. One of the problems for Dontavion Wicks is kind of the mitts, you know?
Right, yeah.
But that's been a problem with Christian Watson as well, and he cleaned that up last year. But I'm encouraged by the fact that those players do not exist anymore. Well, they do exist. I'm sorry to the Wicks family, but yeah, right. they just don't exist in Green Bay. Yeah,
exactly, 100%. I want to talk rookies here with you a little bit. I see you got a couple of them here. If I was to ask you your favorite fantasy rookie not named Jeremiyah Love, who would it or they be?
I mean, if you're asking me just like straight up, well, it's probably Carnell Tate, right? But if you're talking for the 2026 NFL season, there's 2 Washington Commanders I really like, who are, I mean, teenage rounds on FFPC and other platforms. The wide receiver Antonio Williams, again, we were talking about Stefon Diggs as a potential candidate to play for the Commanders because, well, their number 1 wide receiver is 31-year-old Terry McLaurin, who had injury problems last year. Mm-hmm. He's not getting any younger. And I also love Quinshon Allen. And that I will show my bias here. I am a Penn State grad. I currently moved back to State College, Pennsylvania, because my wife just got a job as a professor here. And that being said, that I no, you know, I'm going to say it doesn't color my bias. No, my bias does color this. It absolutely does. But I watched Quinshon Allen for 4 years. He was the lesser hyped of 2 elite recruits in a backfield to Nicholas Singleton. He was a better football player. He is just a better football player than Nicholas Singleton. And to me, Quinshon Allen, I loved the comparison that my friend Fran Duffy from the All City Network made for him. He compared him to Kyron Williams before the draft. And he's like, This guy isn't explosive, but holy crap, he's just a good football player. He's got a nose for the end zone. And I watched as Penn State had just one of the single most disgusting seasons I've ever seen in terms of expectations, what happened with that team. With James Franklin, who's out there, he's in Blacksburg flapping his gums now. James loves flapping his gums, man. He loves to yap. But it was a disappointing season. But I'll tell you who wasn't disappointing: Kaytron Allen. He deserved touches over Nicholas Singleton that James Franklin was not giving him at the beginning of the season because of some player loyalty thing or NIL or whatever the case. And it was very clear the entire season that Kaytron Allen was the better football player. And he was probably one of the only Penn State players who was not a disappointment in 2025. And that, to me, in this era of NIL, when kids can transfer at the drop of a hat, they can quit and leave the team early to prepare for the NFL draft. Kaytron Allen played his ass off and got Penn State from I think we were 3-6, and then we got to a bowl game. Now he took the bowl game off, so does everybody else. I understand that now, but no, I saw this kid play his butt off, and then I look at this backfield. Bill Krosky-Merritt, all right, had an okay rookie season, but he can't do anything in the passing game. Rachaad White's on a cuttable contract. I think they signed Jerome Ford. He's on a cuttable contract. I wouldn't be surprised if Kaytron Allen gets some camp hype. And like the Commanders beat writers are like, man, this guy Kaytron Allen. Look, it happened just last year with Bill, right? Day 3 pick, getting some camp hype. And I know Bill didn't come through. Bill rose to what, like the 8th round in drafts. It was so stupid. Didn't come through on that. But I wouldn't be surprised if Kaytron Allen gets some hype. So in a weak rookie class, it's a couple of Commanders who I think have some unique opportunities to come through.
I'll just do some Penn State trivia with you. You probably know the answer to at least the first question. Penn State's all-time leading rusher is, Joe?
Kaytron Allen.
Kaytron Allen. Now, this I did not know. Do you know who he passed?
Evan Royster.
I did not know Evan Royster was the leading
rusher. Erstwhile Washington Redskin.
Right.
Forgive me, but he played in the league for a while. Was a great lacrosse player in high school, Evan Royster. Yes, I do know that. So yeah.
I mean, like this is Saquon Barkley, Blair Thomas, Curtis Ennis, Larry Johnson, Kajana Carter, and yet it's Kaytron Allen.
Well, Saquon would have broken if he didn't leave early.
Right, I understand. And
Curtis Ennis, right? So yeah, that's the thing. Royster and Kaytron stayed for 4 years. Yeah.
I think, and it's crazy. I think I'm reading this right. Allen had almost 100 more carries than Royster did too. Nobody has gotten more rushing attempts in school history than Kaytron Allen either. Almost 800, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and he's just a good football player, like the kind of guy like Kyron Williams. If you expect him to run away from a linebacker, you're going to be disappointed. But everything else, he can do really well.
Sleeper is kind of a polarizing term in this industry. Everybody's got their own definition for it. And I see who you put here for sleeper. And to me, Joe, this is a true sleeper that you have written down as your favorite. Go ahead and talk.
I'm going to throw 2 out there. They're both wide receivers. One is Ryan Flournoy from the Cowboys. Again, I don't think George Pickens is the flight risk that Rashee Rice is, but he's mercurial. He's saying all the right things right now, and I'm fine with George Pickens at his ADP. I'm not saying I'm fading him, but things have happened with George Pickens where his motivations get questioned. And Ryan Flournoy has come in and produced when given the opportunity the last couple of years. We know that the thing that I guess that would maybe concern you a little bit is Dallas's defense. It's going to be, I mean, it's impossible for it to be worse. It was the worst defense in the league last year. So maybe they don't have to throw the ball as much, but I like Ryan Flournoy. Something happens to CeeDee Lamb or George Pickens. That guy's going to be at the top of every waiver wire article, right? So when I'm thinking about sleepers, I'm trying to think, who would be at the top of a waiver wire article if somebody were to get hurt on their team? And, I think Flournoy can probably get a role in and of it himself. I don't think he'd be fantasy relevant unless Pickens or Lamb got hurt, but I do like that one. And the other one, I have added a ton of last round Tyquan Thornton to my best ball wallet. He was better than Xavier Worthy last year. The Chiefs didn't do anything at the wide receiver position. I've already talked that I think Xavier Worthy, even though I don't love Xavier Worthy, I think it is ADP of like wide receiver 45. That's a completely fair price to pay. But Tyquan Thornton, now, to me, that's also a true sleeper. Somebody who like the world has forgotten about, he's on his second or third team, whatever, but he might actually have an opportunity to produce.
I want to and by the way, I'm with you on Thornton. I need to be drafting him more at late round best ball. I think he makes a lot of sense. There are a lot of offenses that people are excited to draft this year. I think the Chargers are right up there with everybody trying to grab pieces of that offense as much as they can, certainly. But then you have another one for the best fantasy offense in the NFL, and it kind of goes hand in hand with what you've been saying with T. Higgins. There's a lot to love about the Bengals this year and grabbing pieces there.
How many teams have 4 guys getting drafted in the first 5 rounds of fantasy drafts?
I think one.
And I don't even like Joe Burrow at ADP, by the way, unless I'm stacking him. Like, I just think I'd much rather go later. Like, I think Dak Prescott has a similar profile to Joe Burrow, and he's going rounds after Joe Burrow. But the answer is the Cincinnati Bengals. Jamar Chase is a first-round pick. Chase Brown's a second-round pick. I think T. Higgins should be a third-round pick, but he's not. I understand injuries and all that. So it's a simple answer. It's the Cincinnati Bengals.
And when it comes to Chase Brown, I don't think we talked about that spot of the – oh, we did. We with Hampton, Achane, Brown, Barkley, Walker. Where would Brown rank out of those 5 guys for you between him, Hampton, Achane, Barkley, and then Kenneth Walker?
I think I actually like him more than Omarion Hampton, and I like that he goes after Omarion Hampton. I think that's a probable value. Of those guys that you listed, we have him actually behind all of them but Hampton. But I think you can make an easy argument for him over Derrick Henry, over Kenneth Walker as well. I think Saquon, Jeanty, those guys are. I think those guys are a little bit of a tier above. But Chase Brown's a wonderful target, man. If I draft like Puka Nacua in the first round, I can get Chase Brown in the second. That's pretty freaking appealing to me.
That's a hell of a start for sure if you can get Nacua and Brown. I think you've gone to great lengths to talk about your hatred of the ADP for both Malik Neighbors and Travis Etienne this year. Those would probably be on your bust list. Is there another player that maybe we haven't discussed?
No, it is somebody we've discussed. It's Jeanty. And I want to acknowledge, even though I'm in on him, that there is a bust risk for Ashton Jeanty, right? What if the advanced metrics aren't telling the true story and the normie metrics are? Let's just and he's going in the first round, Eric. I mean, yes. I have to acknowledge the risk, even if I'm more optimistic about the player. I do think he is the biggest bust risk. Yes, I do.
And I'll just bring that. Before I say it, I just want to clarify. The Raiders are the only team in the NFL right now that have 2 players going in the first round of PC Big Gorilla drafts, believe it or not. I think that's a good place to end tonight on that note. Go to bed with that one, kids.
Yeah.
Listen, Joe, this was so much fun. It always is. I always learn so much when I talk with you. I will continue to listen to SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio Monday, Wednesday, Friday from 7 to 9, especially tomorrow when I'll be on for a segment with you and Paul Kelly. That's going to be a blast. We will continue to follow you on X at FG_Dolan. Check out Joe's article he just posted on Fantasy Points about auctions, which is, you just talked to Drew Davenport too about this on YouTube, and a great article there about auction strategy as well. Joe, thank you so much. Keep up the great work, man. This was a lot of fun.
Take it easy, Eric. I'll talk to you tomorrow morning.
You got it. That is Joe Dolan, ladies and gentlemen, from Fantasy Point, SiriusXM Fantasy Sports Radio. Want to remind you, we have plenty of FFPC Dynasty Leagues, Empire Dynasty Leagues, starting at $100, going up to $5,000. Remember, half the prize pool in the Empire Leagues are set aside each and every year. And if you are able to win that league 2 years in a row, you will be the winner of that Empire side prize pool as well, that jackpot from the Empire Leagues. Check it out, myffpc.com. Also want to make note, 10 days left until the deadline for the early draft spot announcement for the FFPC main event. If your main event teams are paid in full by July 26th, you will have your draft slot on August 2nd. So no matter if you're drafting late in August or in September, you will know your draft slot on August 2nd if your main event team is squared away by July 26th. Don't forget, After you buy your first team with the main event this year, you get $600 off each additional team as well. MyFFPC.com is where to go for that. We'll be back 7 o'clock next Thursday as we kick off Pros versus Joes Weekend 1. Fantasy Mojo's Darren Armani will join me at 7 o'clock on FFPC Insider Access next week as well. I want to thank Joe Dolan for Joe, for our producer Sean Engel. My name is Eric Balkman. This has been FFPC Insider Access. We'll talk with you again next week.